Welcome to what I hope is another quick Dr. Bob's Garage episode. Replacing the brakes on the front of a 2006 Honda Insight with the automatic, so CVT. It takes a different brake than the manual transmission Honda Insights. First step, jack it up. Second, get the wheel off, got a little cover. Move it to the side. Put some kind of jack stand under the front of your car. And then you got your brakes right here. Put a pan underneath. Also do a little squirt just for good measure. For this you need a 12mm socket and a 14mm wrench without too thick of a head, because you want to hold this slide pin in place while you remove the bolt. That broke free, no trouble. Now once this comes off, the spring clip is going to want to push the caliper out. So break both of them free first, so you don't have to worry about it pushing the caliper off the bracket. There we go. That was pretty easy. Nice thing about these fasteners, although they're rusty on the outside, nice and clean on the inside. They sealed well against the casting. Another thing I'm surprised at on this is that the casting for the caliper and for the bracket, unlike many other things on this Honda Insight, is not aluminum. It's cast iron. I want to compress the piston inside there, but I want to clean it off first so that I'm not going to be getting grit and dirt in the caliper boot. Douse that liberally to wash off all that grime and grit that might be on there. And then there's other ways of doing this. I use a large 6-inch C-clamp. Make sure you've got space in your reservoir to accept the fluid you're pumping back into the system by compressing the piston into the caliper. You might need to remove some fluid from the master cylinder if in fact it's been overfilled, or it would result in being overfilled by pushing this fluid back in there. Yeah, compress it till those little boots are as compressed as they're going to be. Might have to compress it some more after the fact. Now I want to suspend the caliper in the air. There we go. I'll tend to that later on. Right now, just want it hooked. I'm going to hook it to this hook coat hanger I have hanging from the coil spring on the McPherson strut. Now I can work on getting this caliper bracket off. Now I need that bracket off in order to get this rotor off. And this rotor is dug into, it's corroded, it's not in good shape. For that, there's two bolts. For that you need a 17mm. Guess you could use an impact. I was able to get them off without one. And again, like the bolts holding the caliper to the slide pins, they might be corroded on the outside, but on the inside, they've been preserved from corrosion. That's off. Yeah, I think I got my money's worth out of those brake pads. Alright, since it wore it right down to the metal, it ruined the rotor, so I'm going to replace the rotor. And the rotor is attached to the hub with two, looks like Phillips head screws. I hear they're not. I hear they're technically called something else, but a number 3 Phillips head bit works pretty well. If you're like me and you live in the Northeast, this is frozen on there. You can put all the penetrating fluid you want on it. You can try as hard as you want with a screwdriver like this. Not going to come off. The only thing that's going to get it off is an impact driver. Now some will have a nice setup with a bit for the number 3 Phillips head, but mine doesn't. So I've got this janky setup, but put tension on it. And just keep at it. And eventually it will start to move. Don't even try to do it without an impact. Just strip out the cross on the screw. There you go. 2 of these little guys hold the rotor to the hub. Without them, it just pops right off. I'll clean that off. And to get the new rotor, I'm using Bosch rotors and pads. They were a good price at Rock Auto. And they're coated, so they should survive our winters pretty well. I don't know if there's any coating on this surface. Doesn't seem to be. But just for tradition's sake, I'll give it a little wipe down. A little dab of anti-seize on this mating surface. Pop this cute little guy on there. He's so small. There we go. Now you can reinstall these screws with a regular screwdriver, but I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on there so that they don't freeze up. Who knows, next time this will have to be taken apart, but it'll be something, won't be as hard to do. Don't need a lot. It's enough for the mating surfaces, the threads, and the taper. Alright, that is that. The next part's ugly. What we've got is the old caliper. You can see, being made of iron, it's rusty, and that rust has begun to push on these slides. And I think that actually is what caused these pads to freeze up. The rust pushes these little anti-rattle clips up against the little ears of the pad, and it locks it in place. Makes it hard to get out. That's not something that some brute force can't fix. Now we have these slides. There's new ones in the pads, provided with the pads. You want new ones. And there's a wear indicator. No wonder it didn't tell me that the pad was worn down. It broke off. Now what I've got to do is pry these old guides, these old anti-rattle clips out of there, and look at that. Look at all that rust in there. Like I said, that's probably what locked up those pads. Kept them from sliding easily inside and out. So I got to clean up all these surfaces. You can do it, I guess, if you have a sandblaster, but if you just, like me, have a regular little screwdriver, you can do it that way too. First thing is, I wouldn't start with a wire wheel for a few reasons. First off, these little slide pins on mine, they slide nice. I don't want to necessarily have to redo those. They pop out like you just saw, but if the grease on them is good, I'll keep them in there. Now I'll get that back in there after. There we go. Oh, that's not in there at all. I'll get that back in there. You can buy new ones of those. New rubber boots. I'll take that out since it's insisting on coming out. The quickest way to get a start on getting all that corrosion off, a lot of it's just flaking. So, hitting it with a hammer. Not a bad start. Knocks off a lot of the flaky rust. Now you don't want to go putting it in a vise and causing damage to it. Just giving a tap to knock loose the flakes of rust. That's enough for that. And then a good old scraping with the tip of a screwdriver until all the rust has come off. I'm not going to show you the details of that. Alright, it's a little bit cleaner. I think that should be enough. We'll give it a go. What I like to do to prevent further rusting, light coating of anti-seize on those contact surfaces. This is high-temp nickel-based anti-seize. Looks just like the regular anti-seize, but can handle higher temperatures. No need to go crazy. Just enough for a light coating. And then slap these clips in there. There we go. Now it's time to put a little bit of lube on those wear surfaces. Bosch includes some in their packet. You don't need a whole lot. I find it easier to brush it on. A little cheap brush. You get a bag of 50 of them over at Harbor Freight for like $2. This is high temp grease designed to withstand the heat that this braking system is going to generate, and this allows the pads to slide back and forth freely in these guides or these anti-rattle clips. Alright, they're on all the surfaces. I can put those back in. The bolt goes into this through the little ear on that knuckle. So we'll start with the top one. Go to the bottom one. Snug that down by hand, and then these are tightened to 80 foot-pounds. So get your torque wrench, set it. This one's already set to the right setting. Those are ready. And you get your pads. Let me clean off the surface of this. And manufacturing grease. Gone. There's two different pads for the front. One with the wear indicator. This one goes on the inside. And one without the wear indicator. That goes on the outside. It's got these little clips or shims on there. Make sure those stay on. Got to get this caliper back on there. But it has a clip. It has a clip in here that we got to take out. And it's not fully compressed. So we want to clean around that boot. Clean that surface. And using our brake pad, grab that C-clamp and use it to compress the piston the rest of the way. There are tools specifically for doing this. Good on you if you have one. I don't. Been doing it this way for many years. Just compress that till the piston is flush. Otherwise, it won't slide over the new thick pads that I just installed. And there is this anti-rattle clip that pushes on the pads from the top. I fiddled with the other side quite a bit. Took me a while to figure out how to get it out and get it back in again. The trick is you want to get this up, this pad, or this clip, up toward the inside of the pad, and this little ear is going to slip down. There we go. Getting a whole bunch of gunk. That's the old one. Kit includes a new one. I don't know if it has any directional properties, but the way I got it in, finally, was by pushing this in that way until there was enough space, and that required me to push these little wings inside here outward. Push those outward. Oh, there goes my pad. And its little shim. There's enough play in this guy to push down and then move this whole thing back up again. Once that tab is past this shoulder here. There we go. Just slide it into place like that. Clean out any debris. Give a little grease to all these contact surfaces inside the caliper, around this rotor, around the round edge of the piston, and then on the inside of these ears. A little dab there on each side. Then make sure your pads are tight. Oh, and don't forget, if you take out one of these slide pins, put some fresh grease on it. And reinstall it. That's going to take a little pick or screwdriver to get that seal started. There we go. Now this can go installed on those pins. Start one side or one end. Then this spring clip wants to push the caliper out by pushing against the brake shoes there, or brake pads. Push it down, get the other one started. These only get torqued to 16 foot-pounds or 22 newton meters. So I use my little torque wrench to get that tightened to the right spec. There we go, 16 foot-pounds or 22 newton meters. And that's it. Done. Didn't take that long. And of course you got to do both sides. Reinstall the tire. Torque that down. And that's it. Make sure to take that hanger off of your coil spring. Put your wheel on, tighten it. If you've got a Honda Insight, you've been wondering whether you should tackle the brakes on it yourself, well, watch this video, see what I did. Not all that tricky. I hope you found this useful. Take care now.